We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday. You know what that means. We have a guest on the show, a regular co host, if you will. It is Old Soul. I know you all look forward to it. I look forward to it. So, Old Soul, thanks for joining us again today.
Hey, yeah, it's always fun. It always goes by quick, always
It's
quick.
it's always entertaining. You kind of remind me of a girl I had when I was in third grade. You know, you'd have show and tell. Her name was
Yeah,
Sharon Anderson, which was a very Minnesotan name, a very Scandinavian name. And she was a cute girl. She was a very nice girl. And we'd have show and tell, and somebody'd bring their pet lizard or their new cowboy boots or their new bike or
yeah,
something like that, but not Sharon. Sharon would come up, and every time at show and tell, she would tell the whole story about what she and her friends and family did the day before, and it would go on for a long, long time. And she would be naming names that we presumed we knew, but we didn't. She'd say, Johnny knew this and Steve did this. I'm not trying to suggest that yours are long and involved and boring, because they're not. It's very interesting, but you are a storyteller of sorts. And that's one of the reasons why I think people like you so much here on the podcast. Before we get into some of the news, and there's a lot of it, especially on the reproductive rights front, how are things going in your home or circus, as it were? Because, and I don't say that in a negative sense. You always have a lot of shit going on. It would drive me crazy, but somehow you
yeah.
control it. But how are things going in the homestead?
Busy.
Yeah, I'll bet.
The wild, the wild child. She's a different type of teenager. Like, when I left my daughter's dad, like I think she instinctively knew, but then I also like communicate with her. Like it's just you and I, so I do have to rely on you to, handle certain things on your own, be a little bit more independent. So I mean, she was still a child, but the stuff that the wild child does, like as a teenager, she didn't do that. She was like in school and then she would go to like community college part-time as well. She was always like in a different club or something. So it wasn't like me personally having to entertain her and look out for her like as much as I do with her. She needs like a lot of attention. But she had a good week. I was telling you about the stray cat story before. um, and then we bonded a little bit because she was asking me a question, like I was experiencing like a lot of anxiety, and I was telling her the cause of it, where it came from. And she was just like, well, I guess if you could still be a good person after all of that, I could be a good person too. And I'm like, you are a good person. You just have to be more open to let people see that. So,
Yeah. I don't, I think a lot of people who watch or listen to the podcast, and certainly me looking at you, I can't picture you suffering with anxiety or being anxious about anything. You seem, as the kids used to say in the 90s, you seem pretty chill, Old Soul. I don't see you getting riled too much, but apparently you have your moments too.
yeah, it's being triggered by just the amount of like abuse that I see with Trump and like the Republican Party. I watched the video. I know some of the people that watch your podcast, they watch Jesse Dollimore as well. And he did a video about these death threats and stuff. Like the FBI had to come to his home from the Trump supporters that they were doing. And that one, like, it triggered me really, really bad. And the reason that it triggers me is when you were out here visiting with your wife, I told you, my daughter's dad, he would use the system to like get to me. And what he would do is he would call like 911 and tell them that he thought I was gonna like kill myself or something like that.
Right.
And so they would like come in the middle of the night and like wake me up, wake my daughter up, and they would literally like take me to a hospital, and I would have to stay there until they cleared me. A lot of times, like if they were understaffed, I would be there like 2 or 3 days. I would have to figure out what to do with my daughter. It would be scared to like drive. I would hear like ambulances in the background, and I would have to pull over, and I would just shake so bad because I'm like, did he tell them I'm gonna drive the car off the cliff or whatever? Like he would call them and tell them I would do this crazy stuff. And because he said it, they had no choice because they couldn't risk like leaving me and then something happening, then they would be held responsible for it. So I figured out that's what's triggering it is the abuse that I'm seeing. So I'm trying to limit that I'm the abusive parts of it, which is not easy to do because all of it's abusive. So
Well, because
that's
because
what's
of your
triggering.
because of your own experience and the abuse that you're talking about, which is absolutely horrific. That's very
Yeah.
typical of a narcissist to try to gaslight you and try to gaslight others against you. And that's tragic. And I'm sorry that happened. But most of what's triggering you now to be anxious seems to be more about empathy, things happening to other people than happening to yourself. That's kind of interesting. Is anybody of a psychic mindset, oh, you're an empath? Because if you believe in the empath thing, it means you feel the emotions of other people suffering with things.
Yeah, it seems like they are, it's making me nervous as I'm talking about it. It's like the Republican Party is using the system to abuse women, to take advantage of their supporters. Even Eric, we were doing a comment thread on one of his videos, and we were talking about Trump and his possibility of going to jail. And it's like, as much as I want to see him in jail, my mind automatically went to like the Secret Service and the staff at the facility, like everything that they would have to go to accommodate that and to see that happen. And it's like, for me, I'm looking at it like the people that it affects, like, is Trump really worth all that? I do think he needs to be punished and he needs to learn his lesson. But I naturally just like feel sorry for the people who are going to be affected by his actions. You know what I mean? So that's kind of, it's like no matter which way I look at it, I can see an abusive aspect of it. Like he's abusing, taking advantage of somebody, somewhere, the pump and dump and his social media, everything is like, he's so abusive.
And
And so
I,
I can't not watch it, but when I watch it, I can't help but just see how abusive it is to other people. Even I worry about his staff. Like, could you imagine Trump coming home to Mar-a-Lago after having a bad day in court? Like, what they must go through. And a lot of people don't know that Trump hires a lot of immigrants.
right.
So it's like a power dynamic that he has over them. I could just only imagine.
There's a skill you have to learn. And I taught it to myself. And it really takes a lot of stress and strain and confusion out of your head. You can only do what you can do. You can only affect so much. If you can somehow compartmentalize or separate yourself from those things that you can't control. Because honestly, worrying about something you can't control is a total waste of energy, a total waste of emotion. You're putting yourself
Yeah.
through shit that you could be as upset as you want. It's not doing any good. And I know that sounds a little cold, but think of it this way. You've got to be in your right mind and focused to do all the things that you are intended to do, all the things that you need to do. That's all you can really worry about. I need to do this, this, and this. All this other stuff is horrible, but all I can do is what I can do. Don't take on everybody's burden. My wife does the same thing. I'm worried about this person. I'm worried about this person. I worry about people too, but it doesn't engulf me in anxiety because I can only do what I can do. And I've convinced myself over time that I'm not going to worry a lot about things I can't control. I can only hope that if I do what I'm supposed to do, it'll make a lot of things better. And maybe, in a daisy chain effect, it'll help those other things too. If you focus on what you're doing and what you can do, it takes a lot of pressure off of you. But, you got to
Yeah.
train yourself to do that.
Yeah, one of the things like my daughter was just saying too, you could just having to help separate the logic from the emotion. So like an example would be, how when people write into you and they say they're worried, they think Trump is going to win the, 2024 election. So one of the tricks would be, I feel like he's going to win this, but is that feeling logical or can I justify that feeling? So I feel like that because he won in 2020 and that wasn't expected. But is it logical? Like, let's take a look at it. What happened in after he won in 2016? They lost in 2018. They lost in
Right.
2020. In 2022, there was no red wave. And then you can say to yourself, every special election since then has been pretty much a vote against him and a Republican Party. So yes, I feel that way, but is it logical to feel that way? And then that'll kind of help you like calm it down and like get your emotion in check. And so that's what I've been just trying to separate that logic from the feeling. And that'll make me get like less anxious a little bit more quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If, when I say what I do, and I didn't study this guy, but If you ever want to understand what I mean, um, read the quotes from Marcus Aurelius. Um, he's an ancient guy, but he said things like, um, we live only now. Everything else is either past or unknown. If we can accept
Yeah.
that, we just deal with what's going on now. So I don't know. It's impossible to, I can tell people how I think or how they should think, but it's a matter of we're all different people. And thank God there's empathetic people like yourself out there because you do a lot of good in the process. I'm not telling you to change. In fact, I think this is an interesting contrast with you and me. You'll say, "Oh, how can I hug those folks?" And I'll say, "Fuck them." So it is a bit of a contrast here. I wanted to talk about what's going on with the reproductive rights things. There were a couple of things that happened yesterday, and I wanted to see what you thought. Arizona, we had some things going on. Um, the legislature or the Senate, I don't know which, they finally did repeal that 1864 abortion ban in Arizona. Now, I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
I'm happy about that, but I'm still pissed. The idea that the Supreme Court actually reinstated this archaic and draconian law is absolutely ridiculous. There's no excuse for it. So they did repeal it. So that's the good news.
Yeah.
The bad news is they just go back to what they were, 15-week ban, which, okay, you could maybe live with, but it has no exceptions to it. So it's
Yeah.
still rather draconian. What were your thoughts when you heard those two things?
Ah, my heart just broke.
Yeah,
I do know that one of the things that I don't want to say it gives me comfort, but it's a little bit easier to do because I do know that there are people behind the scenes, in
right.
particular Gavin Newsome, who
Hmm.
is really looking out for the people of Arizona. And so it's just a matter of making sure that the women there have the information that they need, and then that way they can get the help that they need there.
Right.
But they're not by themselves. It's still sad and it's still a hard thing to go through. The one thing I can say is at least they're honest about it. Like there's no exceptions. We don't care. Like there's just no exceptions. At least they're honest about it. Because there are people in certain states who take comfort in these exceptions, and there are no exceptions. It's just a piece of paper. Because when you look at the exceptions, they have to be litigated first. So if
Right.
you were sexually assaulted and you ended up pregnant, okay, now you need to file a police report. Now you have to go through all of these steps. This person needs to go to trial and all this other like loopholes that they have. And by the time that happens, the baby could be like 1 or 2 years old. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So
Right.
it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't mean anything. So I guess that's the compare and contrast is they're not really trying to trick anybody. They're saying like, there's no exceptions. We don't care. They are being pretty upfront about it. The contradictory part of that is it lets you know that Republicans, they don't really care about what they say they care about. Because
Right.
if they really did care as much as they said they do, when they find out that it's unpopular, they will still keep going. But once they find out that it's unpopular, they try to step back for it and then try to compromise or however they try to make it look. But they don't care because the moment that they see that it's a losing issue and they try to compromise and try to see where people's coming from. Carrie Lake, that raggedy heifer, she removed certain wordings from her website and everything else. Like you're on camera, you can remove all the words and interviews from your website. We still see and hear what you said. It's just
I can't. I can't.
I don't get it. And she's a woman herself. That kind
I
of
can't.
twist the knife in to know that she's a woman.
I can't tell you how much I enjoy when you refer to Carrie Lake as a raggedy heifer. I think that's fucking awesome. Wow. Yeah, and that's an accurate description too. We have also something going on in Florida. In Florida, they had a 15-week ban, and as of yesterday, it has become a 6-week ban, which is pretty much an all-out ban. Most women don't know they're pregnant before 6 weeks, and now it's a 6-week ban. The only shining star on that whole thing is that we know the question is going to be on the ballot in 2024. And I think we can feel pretty
Mm-hmm.
confident in what's going to happen. So this is only
Yeah.
short term for Florida.
Yeah, there were certain states, certain seats that were just not in play that all of a sudden they are in play because of what they're trying to do. And I do think that the governor there, I hate saying his name, but he was aware enough of that. And he
Mhm.
actually was like trying to change his stance on it until it kind of seemed like maybe he had a meeting with some evangelicals or something, and then he came back around and then he pivoted again. I think he's just pretty desperate after, going down to Mar-a-Lago and meeting with the evangelicals, and all of a sudden he switched right back to that 6 week where he had enough sense to walk that back. But he's a coward like the rest of them. So
A lot of cowards in the Republican Party. And then, of course, we had Donald Trump, who is,
oh God.
it's almost embarrassing when you hear him speak. But somebody asked him if he would be for the idea of monitoring pregnant women in these states where it's illegal to make sure they don't go off to another state or go under the radar and get get an abortion. And he said, yeah, I think they probably should do that. And the fucking thing about it is we've got the Republicans talking about patriotism, talking about freedom. Donald Trump saying that is probably the most oppressive thing I could ever imagine. They talk about people spying on them. Really, our US government is going to spy on pregnant women just so they don't get reproductive health care? I it
Yeah.
just it fucking amazes me that they say it out loud.
Not only do they say it out loud, but they actively try to do it. There's
Yeah.
already travel bans in certain states and certain cities, especially in Texas. And then they're already like trying to submit subpoenas to get records for, women's health records from other states. Um, they want access to certain applications that women have on their phones now. And it's not like they are like behind the scenes doing it. These are like active bills that they're introducing in their states. It's just that, for whatever reason, people would rather care about Donald Trump saying blibber blabber when he walks out of the courtroom than to actually put a spotlight on what they are doing. They're not just talking about it, they're actively doing it. And with Donald Trump, we shouldn't be surprised because he's the one who said that when they asked him, should there be some form of punishment for women who have an abortion? And he said, yeah, there should be. He said it. So
I
he
gotta
didn't change his stance on that.
I gotta tell you, I'm proud of Kamala Harris because she's going around talking about this abortion issue, the
Yeah.
reproductive rights issue, and she's hanging right on the neck of Donald Trump. Talk about the
Mm-hmm.
different circumstances like Arizona, like Florida, like all these other states. And she's basically saying Donald Trump did this. And she keeps
Yeah.
saying Donald Trump did this. And I think that's an important strategy with regards to the campaign. And it's accurate. Donald Trump
Yeah.
has embraced this. He says, I did it. We're going to give it back to the states because he thinks that's a good way out, a good answer that takes him off the hook. But it does not do that because we know when the votes come in the states, it always goes against overturning Roe v. Wade. He's embraced it. Now he can't step away from it. So he's trying to convince all of us, oh, yeah, it's a good idea. But when Donald Trump does that, it never works.
The most thing that's like the most insulting thing that I've heard him say is, it's working out great. Everybody's happy with this solution.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Who are you talking to? And why are you talking to that person? It's not working out great. Everybody is not happy with it. Now, when I have like women here who, like before I came on, the woman that's here, I had to go and get her from the hospital because she was having like a complication. And then I was like getting her set up. And she's pretty like a modest person and having to help her with, certain dressings and things that she needs down there. It
Right.
was so uncomfortable for her because she doesn't know me like that. But her mother isn't here, her sister isn't here. I'm gonna help her with that. But for her, it's just kind of like evasive. And she kept just saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so like, don't apologize. Like we're all women. Like we just kind of have to just suck it up and get through it. Like I've seen worse, trust me. But it's just like I'm pretty sure she would rather her family be there helping her with that. So for him to say everyone is happy with this, no, they're not. People are suffering, they're struggling with this. And like the mental toll that it takes on people, it's insane. It's insane to see what these people go through mentally.
when he says that, oh, everybody loves it. It's going perfectly. We send it back to the States. It's reminiscent of another time when he did the very same thing during COVID. Oh, it's no big deal. It's a hoax. It's not, it's going to go away in a couple days. We'll get the heat and it'll burn off and everything's fine. He's doing the same thing he did with COVID for the with abortion for the very same reason. He sees it as a negative to his campaign. He can't step back from it because all he knows how to do is double down. So he's trying to gaslight or hoodwink people into believing whatever he's saying. Now, in his life in business, even while he was president, he was successful in doing that, but he can't do that anymore. It didn't work during COVID. Well, it did work in COVID for some people. And all that happened was 1 million people died and the country was shut down for a year and a half. So um, we should take note of what he's trying to pull with this uh, reproductive rights issue. We don't,
The
we
thing,
can't, we
the
can't
thing that
afford
he's
to
not,
have it end up the same way.
yeah, and the thing that he is not realizing, and it's kind of like the same thing with during COVID. His states are the red states. His people are the red people, right?
Right.
Those are the people who he is hurting the most
Right.
during COVID. Their numbers were like so much higher than those in blue states.
Right.
Um, Not only that, but the women who's hurting the most and the people he's affecting the most, like most of the women who come here, they voted for him. If they didn't vote for him in 2020, they voted for him in 2016, or they're a part of a certain church that votes for Trump, or maybe their husband or brother or family vote for Trump. But these are the people that he's hurting. So it's not like he's going around just hurting blue states and us liberal women in blue states. He's hurting his own people. Same thing with his social media thing. The pump and dump that he's doing is going to affect and hurt his own people. It's not affecting us. It's not hurting us. It's hurting his own people. And to me, that's just like the saddest part about the whole thing with him is the people who believe in him the most, trust him the most, put money in him the most, have the most faith in him. Those are the people that he steps on first. And he steps on them in order to get to us. And it's the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's so
And
sad.
and no one can say that Old Soul isn't doing her part, trying to convert those crazy conservative rap. Just so people know, you've got this wild child. She's 17 years old, little white girl from a conservative, highly religious family in a red state. You got this wild child up here now, hanging with Old Soul. She's got more discipline here, but she's taking to it. Old Soul's got her liking soul food, hanging out with Uncle Cleo and going, you're going to turn this into a liberal little black girl very quickly.
I don't know what her family's gonna do when she gets to Arizona, but she's all right. She was never a bad kid. It's just that when you are in that situation, you have to adapt to the situation that you're in. It's like you can't be the only sane person in a madhouse. So you have to adapt. You have to kind of get crazy right along with them, or you'll be ate alive, or you'll be brainwashed. Either that, or they will just like weigh you down. But I mean, she's so stubborn. Like you can't weigh her down like that. And I think that was the hardest part is certain people, you're just not going to get them to conform. That's just not going to happen.
When
So
I
I
think
think
of,
that she was never a bad kid. She wouldn't conform to what was expected of her.
when I think of that girl and all the things that you've explained to me, it reminds me of a joke that I saw on TikTok that a black creator said, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So the joke is, you got a mom and a dad, and you got this little boy, 3 or 4 years old. Okay, little boy's messing around doing all the stuff. He gets into the flour, and the flour spills all over him. So he's got this white flour all over. And little boy goes into mom and goes, Mom, look, I'm white. And she goes, Oh my God, go see your father. And her father goes, You got to wipe that stuff off. This is ridiculous. That's stupid. And they get yelled at. And his mom comes and says, Did you learn anything? He says, Yeah. Now I hate all you black motherfuckers. I know white people. Why? I think it's a great thing though that what you're doing with this girl. I think over and above the culture and all this stuff, you're showing that there is somebody that can care for them and still have rules and requirements for them. And
Yeah.
it says a lot about what we've always said about kids needing structure and boundaries. A lot of parents don't get that. They just let them run wild and they end up with shitty kids, and that's what happened. But you are helping to turn this girl around, and you might actually change her whole life because she's finally in a situation where, and you'll probably be paying for college too. I'm just saying.
Sylvie has a couple of more weeks and then she's off. She did have, that was the good thing. They did have a Zoom court hearing where they did it's a temporary guardianship thing that they did. And so certain benefits that she qualifies for, that now that she's like with her aunt and her grandmother now, she can get I think TANF, I think it was like $350 a month or something like
Oh,
that.
okay, good.
And then she also gets and then she also gets like EBT. So she gets to qualify for those things, which will help them with her while she's there. So it's not as much of a strain as it would have been, but she's gonna be all right.
Yeah. You're gonna have when she
As long
goes.
as they keep her busy. And by keeping her busy, we keep ourselves busy.
Right,
I
right,
don't know
right.
how good I had it with mine.
You may have to send back some recipes when she goes back to Arizona, because I don't think mom and grandma are going to know how to cook the stuff that you're cooking for her.
She's only 4 hours away. She'll be all right.
That's the scary part of it. That's the scary part. There was something that you saw in one of the threads, and I forgot what it is now, but you wanted to bring it up here to give a better explanation. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you know how like we've been saying that when the Supreme Court hears this absolute immunity thing,
Yeah,
that the Supreme Court will cause the delay. Well, some people thought that the delay was sending it back to Judge Chutkin.
right,
That's not the delay. That's only part of the delay. So part of the delay is getting it to the Supreme Court in the first place, right?
right.
Once it gets to the Supreme Court, they can take their time making their ruling. Nobody thinks, not even Trump's defense, that they're going to side with him on this. That's just not going to happen.
No,
So what they're going to do, most likely, is they'll send it back to Judge Chutkin with instructions like what part of his case was part of his official duties and which part were not a part of his official duties, right?
right,
So then she's going to rule on that. And then Trump and his attorneys get to say, well, these acts that she said that wasn't a part of his official duties, we don't agree with that. So now we get to appeal that decision to the Eighth Circuit. The Eighth Circuit, most likely they're going to side with Chutkin, and then he's going to say, well, I don't like their decision either. And then he gets to appeal it to the Supreme Court again.
right.
So that process is the process of allowing him more time. That is giving him time to run out the clock. It's not giving him more time just sending it back to Chutkin. So a lot of people didn't understand how sending it back to her, because a lot of people were still thinking that, oh, this could happen in 2024. He can go to trial in August or whatever. If they make that ruling saying that you need to separate what was part of his official duties and which aren't, and from everything that I can read on my own, it looks like that's what they're going to do just to help him run out the clock. So it puts her in a position to where she has to make a choice to say, this was part of his official duties and this wasn't. And when
Right,
you look at it, the whole case is him. None of that is a part of his official duties. So
right.
once she ruled on that, then it gives him the option to appeal to the Eighth Circuit and then again appeal to the Supreme Court. And that runs it out past the election, most likely past 2024. And that's the part that people weren't getting.
Well, and see, that's the thing I've heard some people talk about. The question to the Supreme Court wasn't what's official and what's
Mhm.
personal. That wasn't the question. The question was,
Yeah.
does he have total immunity? There might be some
Mhm.
things he would have immunity, and other things he certainly does not have immunity. But the question was total immunity. So, for my mind, the Supreme Court should answer that question instead of
Yeah.
dissecting it out to make it more
Yeah.
complex. But
Mhm.
I have a feeling they might do that. Now, there's
When you
another.
listen to the questions that they were asking him, especially Alito and Thomas, that's what they were trying to do, is dissect it. Like, well, what does this mean? And what does that mean? What does total immunity mean? So they're trying to dissect it when there's already laws on the book to say that there's certain things he can do in his official capacity and
Right.
certain things he cannot do. So there's already laws on the book about that, but they were trying to dissect it in a way to try to say, well, we're not technically clear on this part, so they're going to send it back to Chutkan to try to make her clarify it. And then once she makes a ruling on that, it's a new ruling. So now he gets to appeal it
Right,
again.
right.
And so
Now,
that's them allowing him to run out the clock, which is just, it's so egregious
it is
that,
egregious.
oh my goodness.
I wonder if they're actually going to do that though. Because they're going to get a lot of heat if they do that. There's another part of this too that some other creators have come up with. They can send it back to Chutkan, but of course, their egos might be infringed on because they want their stamp on this decision, not Chutkan's. But if Judge Chutkan gets this case back, what she can do, she can go, well, let's figure it out and make those fuckers run their whole case, all their evidence, all their witnesses in this hearing ahead of an actual trial. And that is not something Donald Trump and his lawyers want. So if they send it back to Chutkan, they should be careful what they're asking for because it may be a whole nother experience. Because whether he's convicted of that trial or not, if the evidence is exposed between now and November, that's just as damaging as going through the trial because you could essentially be getting all the evidence and witnesses you would in a trial. So it depends on what Chutkan really wants to do, if she's willing to do that, if she's pissed off because of the bullshitting around, and she seems like the kind of gal that might have that kind of attitude. This could work against Donald Trump altogether. So I'm not really that worried about it. I've said this before, and I wonder how you feel because you're of a reasonable mind, and I don't question the fact that you say they're going to send it back to Chutkan. I almost don't care if it comes before the election or after the election. I see what's going on in the Manhattan district, and it's pretty much playing out like I thought. That's going to fucking sink him. If they want to wait till after the election and Donald Trump has no protection at all, and they want those 3 trials to run then, cool. I'm fine with it as long as he sinks them in the Manhattan district and it's going badly for Donald Trump in the Manhattan district.
What made me, I was a little anxious, and then I saw that the Manhattan trial was going through, and I was just like, oh, okay. I was just hoping that we got something before the election. Like, I don't care. And then I was looking at it like this is just the smaller of the cases, right? So like, how are people going to feel about it? What are they going to think? But then I started thinking about it. And when you think about Republicans and MAGA, they thrive off of the drama and the salaciousness of it.
Right.
None of these other trials really have that aspect of it, but the Manhattan one. It's very salacious. It's very drama-like. It involves adult film stars. It involves paid mistresses. It involves a tabloid. It just involves all of this soap opera stuff that they just latch onto. And I do think that that case speaks to them more than anything factual, more than any of the other trials does. This is like their lane. So I do think sometimes you hear them say, and as hard as Fox News is trying to make it look like this case isn't going nowhere, a lot of them are paying attention to it. And then the way that he's acting, like this whole bravado that he had built up going into there, he comes out with a defeatist attitude. His color changes by the day, which is so funny. I'm trying not to laugh, but it's like he has that Monday orange.
Yeah,
and then the rest of the week he just gets more and more pale as it goes along.
One minute,
and then the way he complains and he's cold and it's this and it's that. And when you think about it, court is they get there at like 8 and they're done by 4:30, but then they have 2 breaks in between there, and then there's like an hour and a half for the lunch. So he's technically only sitting there for like 4.5, 5 hours a day. And he is saying that this is like so torturous for him. And that bravado that he had, it just like chips away every single time he does it. So I don't really focus on the other stuff. It's just like this one is just giving them everything that they need to pay attention to.
Well, I've had some female commenters on my videos talking about that very subject, how he's whining and crying, how he's acting
Hmm.
the victim, how he's complaining about the cold. Um, and they've come back and said, look, we had 1 million people die during COVID. We've got
Yeah,
women today suffering and struggling and dying because of what he's done.
yeah,
There is no sympathy for the motherfucker. He's just a whiny little bitch, and
yeah,
it's taken its toll on him. And you can tell he's listening to the criticism. You know, people were saying, "Well, he's got no family out there." I mean, 2 days ago, I was saying he's got no family out there. That's pretty impressive for a family man. And then yesterday, Eric Trump shows up. Ken Paxton showed up for some fucking reason. Suppose he had nothing else going. But Eric sat there, and a lot of people who watched Eric in this trial um, said they almost felt sorry for him because there was a lot of information, a lot of documents that he didn't even know, that he was just realizing at this moment, probably
yeah.
thinking to himself, what kind of piece of shit is this? And really being taken aback by it. And I think a lot of people will get that sense. A lot of people will say, "Oh, it's just the hush money trial." It has nothing to do with the hush money. It has to do with election interference and fraud and it's like they say, it's not the crime, it's the cover up. They always get you. And that's what's getting Donald Trump in this case.
Yeah, and you know what is so Donald Trump is his own worst enemy.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
in this case, if he would have agreed to certain evidence or agreed to just like the basic facts of the case, a lot of this stuff would not have been allowed in.
Right.
But because he didn't agree to the fact that he even knew Stormy Daniels. Like, I don't know this woman, I don't know where she came from, I don't know anything. So now they have to bring in corroborating evidence, corroborating witnesses that he did know her. So if he would have just said, "Yeah, I knew her, however, I never paid her," or something like that, all of these witnesses and people that they're marching in to corroborate, they have to bring all of these people in before they can even bring her on the stand to
Right.
talk about the fact that she knew him. So it's like if he would have just agreed to this stuff when they did like those hearings of the evidentiary hearings and stuff, if he would have just gave the bare minimum, all of the salacious stuff that we're seeing right now, none of that would have been allowed in.
Right.
The only reason that it was allowed in is because he denied, denied, denied. And so in order to put certain evidence on the stand, it has to be corroborated first. So then that's why we have to bring in the guy from the tabloid. That's why we have to bring in this person's attorney and all, like, none of this stuff had to be allowed in because of who he is by nature.
Yeah.
That's the only reason we're seeing all of this stuff.
Well,
And I'm pretty sure his attorneys told him that. Like,
oh,
he had to know that.
he does know that, but as I've said before, he's a very emotional, very insecure, and very reactionary. I mean, you will see it every time somebody does something wrong or somebody gets exposed for something. His go-to is, "Yeah, I don't really know him." I mean, his son could do it. He would say, "I didn't really know him." That's just how he reacts to things. It's always the go-to. And it may have worked when he was a boss or even the president, but it's not working now. I mean, he says he doesn't know Stormy Daniels, didn't have an affair with Stormy Daniels, and then his administrative assistant comes up and says, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
she was in Trump Tower and she was in his Rolodex. I gave him the information," and he looks like a fool sitting there, and he just keeps
And
looking
that,
forward.
look how much credibility that, like, it kills his credibility with the jury. So, like, if I was in a courtroom and I was cheating on my honey with someone and I'm saying, "No, I didn't cheat on him." And the DA tells me, "If you don't say that you cheated on him, we're going to have to bring in his mother, your sister, your cousin, his attorney, his Rolodex. We have to, your Rolodex, your personal information, your text messages, your email. We have to bring in all that stuff when you could just sit there and say that you cheated on him." Now, I may have started off denying it, but at that point, I'm like, "Wait, you got to go through my phone, my emails. You got to bring my mom on the stand. You know what? Yeah, I know him. I cheated on him. Yeah, it happened." It's kind of like when you realize how much damage the lie is going to cause you, at what point do you just admit to the lie? Because it doesn't even make sense to lie, because now at this point, he's out there saying he knew her. Yeah, I knew her, but I didn't pay her. When if you would have said this 2 months ago, we wouldn't even know all this information that we know now, sir. Like it's
Well,
the
and that
dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. I watch a lot of court TV, but this is like one of those
well,
dumb moments.
well, that is the fatal flaw in Donald Trump and all narcissists and most of the Republican Party at this point. They cannot or refuse to ever admit they're wrong. I mean, there comes a point where you got to cut your losses and say, I mean,
Yeah,
I've been married 40 years. My wife knows
yeah.
when I'm lying before I'm lie. So
Mhm.
at that point, it's fuck it. Okay, yeah, you caught me. That's all you can do. But he physically cannot do that. He will lie until he dies. He will never admit to doing anything wrong. He will never admit to losing anything. He will never admit to anything that makes him look bad, no matter how bad the prospect of what's going to get exposed. And he'll just keep denying until he dies. And it kills
But
him.
it makes no sense
No, it doesn't
because
make sense.
I saw a video of one of his supporters. She was like an older woman, and she's sitting outside with all her Trump gear on and her Jesus Bible with what? They don't go together. But anyway, and so the guy was asking her about the trial, and she says, well, most men cheat. That's kind of what they do. And most guys, from time to time, they pay women for their company. And I'm thinking to myself, woman, what? So he's trying to tell this lie to his supporters that they don't even repeat those lies because even they know better. So it's kind of like you're lying to an audience and they're like, yeah, we already know you lying about that, but we're still gonna clap anyway. It's the weirdest thing in the world to me that you will lie to people who already know that that's a lie. Like he's not convincing anyone with this lie. I
Well,
don't expect him to care about the people he got to drag on the stand and the embarrassment that it causes his family and his wife and all that stuff. I don't expect him to care about that. But it's kind of like, what's the point in lying to people who are already defending your action? You know
well,
what I mean? So if she didn't believe that he did it, that's one thing. But she knows that he's done it and she's justifying his actions. So why would you lie to her when she's justifying what you did? Why are you lying? She's already making excuses for you.
well, and that's the last line of defense for all narcissists. It's the one moment where they do admit that they did something, but there's always a caveat with it. Okay, maybe I did it. Maybe I'm caught. Maybe I did it, but everybody does it, so it should be fine. They did that with regards to the fraud in his business. Even people coming out
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, people are going to be mad because everybody does that." Oh, does that make it right? And that's what these apologists will do that watch Donald Trump. He may not admit to have done it wrong, but they realize that the facts are there and they go, yeah, okay, he did it, but everybody does it. And that's their explanation.
Yeah.
It's sad.
But why lie to him? If you can see your supporters on television justifying your horrible behavior, you don't have to lie about that behavior because they're already justifying it for you. They already have an excuse for you.
Right.
So why would you lie to them? This is just dumb. And it's so interesting to watch how he brings literally all of this on himself. Like everything that he's experiencing right now is at his own hand and his own big ass mouth.
Well, and the
I
reason,
can't do it in this man's mouth. It's like
well,
I could never go to one of his rallies.
the
I
the
couldn't.
the complexity of this whole thing is he won't ever admit he's wrong. When his people see they have no choice, the facts are there, the evidence is there, they say, okay, but everybody else does it. And the question is, why do they do it? They do it because they don't want to admit they're wrong, that they stood behind Donald Trump. They're going to smooth over every crime he's done that they can't explain away. And they go, well, everybody does it. Why is everybody so upset? This is all about people from Donald Trump all the way down to the dumbest Trumplafuck that refused to say they were wrong. I mean, after we've seen all we've seen for the last 7 years and now the trials and all the evidence, if I'm an intelligent person, I go, oh, I fucked up. I fucked
Yeah.
up. I need to get away from this as soon as I can. But they can't even do that. They refuse to admit they're wrong.
But what's the sad part about that? And I really don't know who needed to hear it, but it's probably somebody need to hear it. Like until like the bus crashes it's never too late to jump off of that bus.
Right.
Like it's never too late. And it's like the further along that you allow for it to go, the more difficult it will be. It's not difficult to jump off. It's just like you have a longer road to get back up here. You know what I
Right.
mean? So like you may have stopped talking to family, or you may have stopped talking to friends, or lost money and that type of stuff. But you can still get off and you can still start heading back. It may not be an easy road back, but you can still go back. It's just
Right.
like the further you allow it to go, the further back you have to walk. And it's just kind of like, I think sometimes people think that maybe they won't be forgiven, that maybe certain people are just done with them forever. And that could be true, but
Yeah.
it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? You can still build relationships, and not every single person is going to be like, screw you when you try to come back. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's not as difficult as they make it up in their minds to be. People are very forgiving, especially when you're like a loved one. They they stop dealing with you because it's hard to watch you be wrapped up in that. They didn't stop dealing with you because they don't care about you anymore. It's difficult to watch somebody you care about be in a cult and believe and spew those things that they spew out of their mouths. But it's not like it's not you personally, it's your actions and your lifestyle that you're living. But it's never too late to go back.
Yeah,
And I wish
absolutely.
more people realize that.
Yeah, some people will never give up. Some people will never admit they're wrong, even when there's every possible explanation that they are wrong. Old Soul, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We're midway through the Rational Boomer podcast with our guest, actually co-host, Old Soul. We've been talking about the whole reproductive rights issue, and there's a lot going on with that. Then we kind of went into Donald Trump's trial that's going on. It's starting back today after one day off. Um, but before we talk more about the trial, I wanted to bring up the whole gag order thing and see what you're thinking about this. We know about a week ago, Donald Trump had to go through um, a hearing as to whether he violated the gag order. Turns out that just the other day, Judge Marchand came back with a decision. He found him guilty of 9 violations of the gag order, and he was fined $1,000. Now, prior to the
Yeah.
point where he gave that finding, there was another hearing set up to be today for new violations of the gag order. And a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen today when he has this hearing. By the time you listen to this podcast, the hearing may or probably will be over. I don't know if he'll give a decision right away or not. But I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, they had the first hearing and they found him guilty. So the second one, they're setting him up and now they're going to put the hammer down. And I thought that might be the case too. But now as I think about it more, I don't think that's probably what's going to happen, because this new hearing came about before the decision was laid out by the judge. What I
Yeah.
think is going to happen is they're going to fine him $1,000 each time, but we're at the end of the road. I mean, the judge said, I can't do any more than fine you $1,000. It's either that or put you in jail. That's the option. And I think today's hearing and whatever finding they have is going to be the last shot. The only thing left for Donald Trump is to go to jail after this. So he's got another 2 months of this trial and he needs to keep his mouth shut for 2 months. Good luck with that.
I thought that the reason that he spaced them out for, a couple of days was just to see if he would take his threat of jail seriously. And I thought, like, if he, within that time frame from his talking to and his threat and his fine and his threat to go to jail, and between this time, if he would have violated, yeah, I don't think Judge Marchand would have like hesitated to like show him that he's serious. But I do think that maybe he was just trying to see if he's going to take it seriously and violate it. As long as he doesn't, then he'll just get his fines. but I just think it's just as much as I don't want to see Secret Service stuck in there with him, I do think that he's just going to have to, because I don't think Trump can help himself. His
No,
impulse control, and I know that a lot of people who start to, I don't know the correct term, but me growing up around like older people, they just say when they lose their faculties, one of the things is they lose their impulse control. And I don't think he had any to begin with.
no.
And it clearly is just getting worse and worse and worse. So I do think like I give him a week and a half, and then, that might be giving him too much time. But you know what Eric said in that thread? Remember I told you I watched this video and we were like chatting back and forth in the comments?
Right.
He said that he heard that they were going to have like someone to oversee his social media posts.
Wow.
And so it would have to go through that person before he could post anything. Kind of like that oversight that he has over like his bank accounts and stuff.
Those
It would be
businesses,
an
yeah.
overseer. Yeah, an overseer of his social media. I hadn't heard that, but he did say that. And I was like, huh. The first thing I thought was like, if he can't oversee his own bank accounts and he can't oversee his own social media, how can he oversee the country? You know what I mean? But he did mention that, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So maybe that could be something that Judge Marchand implements as well
Yeah.
on
Well,
Thursday.
I think though, if he continues, he has no choice but to do something with him and
Yeah,
put him someplace, because the $1,000 is not enough, but he can only fine him $1,000. That's the absolute limit. And that's kind of what the judge was saying. I can only give you $1,000 fine. Now that doesn't impact you as much as other people. Maybe if I could give you a $2,500 fine or a $100,000 fine, that might have more impact on Donald Trump. He says, but I don't have that latitude. I can't do it. It's either the $1,000 fine or put you in jail. And I think the judge doesn't want to put him in jail because he doesn't want to disrupt the case. The judge, first and
yeah,
foremost, wants this case to go forward as quickly and efficiently as possible, get it done, get a decision, and get it out of the way. He doesn't want to
yeah,
do anything that's going to create a circus in this whole situation. But at the same time, he can't allow Donald Trump to intimidate witnesses or intimidate the jury or the prosecutors. So the judge is really getting tested here. I mean, he's doing his job because he's got to make the right choice. All of us out here in podcast land say, put that motherfucker in jail. And we'd love to see that. But that should be the last choice for the whole picture. I mean, we want this trial done. We want him convicted of crimes, and then jail will come after that. Um, we would love to see him spanked while he's in there, but if that's going to slow down the rest of the process, we don't want to see that. So this is a balancing act by this judge.
Do you think it'll be an overseer of the social media post, and then the jail time will just be for verbal
Yeah, well,
breaks in the gap?
I wouldn't be surprised if they put somebody overseeing his social media post, but the problem with that is now you're saying we're going to hire somebody to control Donald Trump. Donald Trump walks around with his phone. He punches things in at 2 a.m. I don't know if that overseer will do any good unless they set up some kind of uh, technical thing where when he posts, it automatically goes to them and then they release it or don't release it. But the moment that happens, I mean, think about it. These lawyers are saying crazy shit because Donald Trump tells them to say crazy shit. They know it's crazy shit. They know it gets them in trouble, but they feel the pressure of Donald Trump. So if the lawyers can't stop him from spewing shit and making them do shit, is an overseer of his account going to work? Because if True Social doesn't work for him anymore, he'll just be talking more. He's like, if you've got water running through the house, it'll find the crack to get through. The water will always get through. He's always going to say whatever he wants to say. Um, but I will say, if you look at and hear about what he's doing in court now, he's been a little more subdued, not only in court, but after court. He's being careful as to what to say. And here's an interesting thing. One of the things the judge told him to do when he found him guilty of the 9 charges of violating the gag order, said, all that shit that you got up, you better fucking take it down off of social media. And Donald Trump, Mr. Insolent little fucking child, he took them all down. They took them all
Yeah.
down. He did what he was told to do, or at least somebody did. So I think Donald Trump is feeling the pressure now. And he doesn't really know what to do with himself. But like you said, he can't control his impulses. So when it gets to a point and it builds up, it's going to be like Old Faithful in Yellowstone. It's going to explode at some point because he just won't be able to hold it in.
I almost think that him not being able to control his social media is like worse than him going to jail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that might hurt him worse in some kind of weird way. Like he has to be in that much control of it. You know what I mean? I still don't think that he wants to go to jail. I think that he wants to see how far he can push it and push it and push it. And then I honestly think that it's a part of Trump that's like, I want to see if he can do it. Not that he wants to go, but kind of like, I want to see if he can do it. Like he's almost challenging him. Like they're playing a game of chicken. Who's going to
Yeah.
dodge first? And I think maybe that's how he might be looking at it. That's why I only give him like a week or so before he's not going to be able to help himself. He's
Well,
going to violate it. There's no way that he doesn't.
well, and the thing about it is if they put a governor on his social media, what's that going to do? It's going to piss him off a lot. I mean, he's already
Yeah,
suggesting the judge is taking away his First Amendment right because he can't intimidate the jury. So
true.
that's going to piss him off a lot. And anybody that tells him you shouldn't do that, you couldn't do that, all that means is he's definitely doing it because he
Yeah,
doesn't like to be told not to do something, and he needs to prove a point that I'm the stronger person, so I'm going to fucking do it whether you like it or not. Um, I don't know if putting somebody over his social media is going to help because that fucking mouth, unless you put a ball gag in his fucking mouth, he's going to keep talking.
I do think though that would go to intent though. So it can be like if I appointed a conservatorship like over your social media, and then you went out of your way to verbally intimidate the jury or make threats or try to somehow harm the case, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of shows intent. Like you went around the barricade that I have in order to like intentionally break this gag order. So I think maybe that could be, if he did do something like that, that could be something that helps like affirm his action when he does have to put him in jail.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what the judge wants to do. He wants to give the impression that I gave him every chance, and it's not me
Yeah,
putting him in jail, it's him putting him in jail because he knew better, he was warned, and he did all this stuff. You can't blame the judge
yeah,
because the judge laid out the parameters and Donald Trump stepped over them. And the idea that Donald Trump wouldn't step over the norms or the parameters is fucking crazy to think. I
yeah,
think there will come a point where the judge will have to say, because it's not really up to the judge to say was that a violation or not. The prosecution, every time there's a violation, they file a motion, it goes to the judge, and now the judge has to answer this, and he has to answer it, to the best of his ability. The judge can't say, I'm not going to listen to that, I'm going to let him go on this. When the prosecution says fucker did it again, he's got to address it. And if he did in fact
yeah.
violate the gag order, he's got to do something. So I think at some point he's going to have to make that decision to put him in jail for a day or two or whatever. And I think Donald Trump is pushing him to the limit, but I think he thinks a day or two in jail would be good for him in terms of fundraising and in terms of whipping up the people that support him. I mean, that's what he's doing. He goes out there and he's trying to whip people up to stand up for him and
Yeah.
fight back for him. Except, he tried to do that in this trial, and what he ended up getting was 5 MAGA fucks in a clown car, and that's all he's got. The people don't have the fight in them anymore. They're not going to come out and fight for Donald Trump. They're either too afraid or there's not enough people willing to do it. He's going to have to make that decision, though. He may have to go
What
to
made
jail.
him think what made him think that people would be willing to do that for him? There was a time between January 6th and when Biden took office, right? If He's talking about release the hostages. He could have easily said, anybody that was there on January 6th, I need you to turn yourself in so you can get pardoned before I get up out of here. He didn't do
Right.
that.
Right.
He went quiet. He just left these people on their own to deal with the consequences of it. And so far, he's the only one, and he is the main instigator who hasn't had to face that yet. He's going to, but he hasn't had to face it yet. So it's kind of like if these people have any brain cells left, they would not put themselves in a predicament again to lean on somebody who left you hanging the first time. It's like, shame on you the first time, shame on me anytime after that. So I don't understand. And he's really, you can see him pushing it,
Right.
trying to get them to turn violent. And even in interviews, when people are asking him this weird question, like, if you don't win, how are your supporters going to act? Nobody's worried about how his supporters going to act if he loses. People are scared if he wins.
Right.
Because Biden is the head honcho right now, whether anybody wants to realize that or not. It's not going to go the same way that it went on January 6th. And I think even the violent people, they know that. And then a lot of those people, it didn't take long for them to be in jail to be like, yeah, I could talk trash online, but I don't need to be getting up going nowhere.
Yeah. Well, you asked the question, what makes Donald Trump think that he can whip this crowd up and come out and fight for him, in spite of the fact that everything we've seen is they're not willing to do that? You may not be able to grasp this because you have a better, clearer, purer mind. But the reason Donald Trump continually thinks that people will come out and fight for him is because he's delusional. He's Donald motherfucking Trump, the greatest human that ever lived, the greatest president there ever was. Of course, people are going to come out and risk their lives to fight for him. No matter how often he is disappointed, he still thinks that. He believes that he has that support. That's the scary thing about Donald Trump. With the narcissistic mind, everything they say, they believe. And when it doesn't turn out the way they want, there's an excuse, and they just double down and bully their way through because they think they can control it and make it go their way. And it never ends because he never says he's wrong. He can't be wrong. He's Donald motherfucking Trump.
That's the thing. When you said that, that made me realize, like, my daughter's father, narcissist all day, but he wasn't like stupid. So I don't know what it's like to be around a moronic narcissist. You know what I mean? Like, he was very methodical, very like planned out the way he moved and the way he did things. Very good in manipulation to turn the charm on and off whenever he wants to.
Right.
Donald Trump, I think it's hard for me. Like, I can see his narcissism and I can see that in him. But sometimes it's like there's no correlation there and it's just disconnect because he is such a buffoon. Like, he is such an idiot. So it's hard for me like to watch somebody who is narcissistic, but so methodical and just precise with their actions and so deliberate. And Donald Trump, it almost seems like he stumbles into some of this stuff. You know what I mean? It's like he just so happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right amount of angry people in this country to create this movement behind him. It was almost like a 1 in a million shot. And so when I see people not falling off and I see how stupid he is, especially like when I was telling you earlier, like transcribing some of his, like the things that he says, it's like, I don't understand how people are like connecting to this, but it could just go back to what you said before. They just don't want to admit that they're wrong.
Right.
But I've never seen anyone so evil and wicked and stupid at the same time. Like, this man is dumb. He talks and says nothing.
You make an interesting distinction because most narcissists that I've known, including my father, they were fairly intelligent, or at least what's the word I'm looking for? They were very manipulative and relatively smart. And that's what I said about my father. He was a lot like Donald Trump in terms of his narcissism and being sociopathic, because Donald Trump is certainly sociopathic, doesn't care about anybody else. But my father was pretty smart and pretty articulate. And for my money, that made him more dangerous. And I think most narcissists do have that. Donald Trump is a bit of a unicorn. Donald Trump is a mega narcissist but he's incredibly stupid. I know people will argue with me about it on the other side. Oh, he's smart. He's a billionaire. Just listen to the motherfucker talk. He speaks at a
Yeah,
12-year-old level. He's not very articulate. He doesn't think about anything he says. He just says it. He's not
right.
as calculating as most narcissists. So he has the narcissist tendencies, but he's also stupid. And I'm not saying that to be mean or judge Donald Trump. The facts are the facts. He's not a smart man.
He's not. When he talks, he doesn't say anything. He's just talking, and there's just words that's spewing out, and it makes sense to no one. It doesn't even
Right.
make sense to him. He's just saying it, and it's almost like the narcissist that I'm used to is almost like an evil type A personality type of person.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? But he doesn't have that type A personality to where he's willing to put in the work to force things to work in his favor. It's
Right.
almost like, and even like his campaigning, he's like, I want to be in this city and that city and this one. Like, I'm used to a narcissist that would show up just to prove that that's what they wanted to do, and just to prove that you were wrong.
Right.
Trump will just have no problem sitting at Mar-a-Lago eating cheeseburgers and tweeting when he's saying he wants to be in other cities. Like, he's had more days off during trial than he's had on during trial. And he's only spent like what, 1 day out of those off days campaigning.
Yeah.
And then his narcissism just lets him know that people are not going to realize or recognize that. But it
Well,
could be part of what's feeding that narcissism is he created this bubble around himself with the people that cater to him,
well, and that's why
which
that's why
is
I think
weird.
that while he is a narcissist and a sociopath, I think he might be better described as a spoiled, incorrigible child. Because
Hmm.
that's how he acts. He acts like a child and he's spoiled,
Yeah.
and children don't know as much as they should know. And I think it has a lot to do with how he was raised and how he went through his business life. He's always been, like you say, insulated. He's gotten away with everything. And now he's at a point where he's getting away with nothing. And it's confusing to him. So the only thing a spoiled child can do when they don't get things going their way is strike out, yell, scream, cry, slap somebody or whatever. And that's really the behavior we're seeing. At this point, we're not seeing the narcissism is there, but it's really more a spoiled child. And this is why he
Yeah.
doesn't come off too bright, because he's at a lower level than everybody else. He's like a child that's been stunted from 12 years on, and he hasn't grown up at all. A motherfucker's Peter Pan.
He doesn't even have like the hygiene of an adult when you think about
No,
it.
no,
Because like when you're an adult, you get up, you do what you have to do. But when you have like a child, especially like boys, you have to kind of make them take a
yeah,
shower. Like, hey, did you take a shower today? Da, 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 da. Like, and it's like he's that child that doesn't have a parent that makes him do any of those things.
right.
Like, he's so lazy where he doesn't even put his spray tanner over his, like, he just forgets his ears and his neck and the rest of his body. He's just it's like his hygiene is even like a child. Like, everything about him is childlike. But this is not Wonderland. These are like real people lives that he's playing with. It baffles my brain that there are like actual adults out there who look at him the way that they do. It, but then I'm not a cult expert, so I can't dissect the psychology behind it, but it is mind-boggling to say the least.
I came up with a fundraising plan for Donald Trump, and I think he could do it, and I think he probably would do it. We're used to the orange shit on his face. I bet he could cut a deal with Target, and instead of the orange stuff, just put the Target logo on his face and the spot in his nose, charge them $50 million, and go to court every day with the Target on his face. And instead of that fucking dog, they could put Donald Trump's face on everything.
It almost looked like clay sometimes. Like,
It
I
does.
know like previously it would be kind of like a tanner, like, okay, and now they're like, is it a spray tan? Is it like a paint tan? Like, I couldn't get it, but now it's just kind of like it's like a clay or something that I would see at Red Rock Canyon or something. It's
When I look
he's
at
an
him,
oddball.
when I look at him with his face tan and his ears exposed and his neck and his hands and all this stuff, and you see how really white he is, it reminds me of when I was younger. I got my my grandmother up in the North Woods where our cabin was. She had to go to a funeral, and I got her to take me to the funeral because I'd never been to a funeral. and I looked at the body. And as soon as she looked at the body, uh, it wasn't done very well. And she
Oh,
immediately put her hands over my face and pulled me away. But I remember what I saw. That's the first time I ever saw a body that was put together by uh, uh, a bad makeup
the
person,
mortician.
the mortician. Yeah, a bad one. And when I look at him, I
Mhm.
go, if he had the same makeup on that he has on right now, and he happened to be dead in a casket, people would say, "Oh God, he doesn't look good." He doesn't look good as if he was dead, but he walks around live with this shit on. It's absolutely fucking crazy.
I don't know if that's like the best that he can do. And if it's the best that he can do, it's like, oh, poor little thing. He's just slow. But a part of me think that he's just lazy.
Yeah,
It's kind of like he gets up in the morning and he spends so much time doing his hair, and then by the time he gets to his face, he's like, "That's good enough. Screw it," and he just leaves. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what made you think that you could just stop right there? Like, is that the best that you could do, or are you just lazy? Like, maybe
I,
his arms are getting tired from the 360 wraparound that he has. I don't know, but
well,
I don't
even
know how he looks at himself and be like, "Yeah, I look good." Like I wouldn't leave the house like that. I would be embarrassed. Maybe have my shades on or my cap or something so I wasn't recognized in public. But he has no problem going in front of like thousands of people and thinking he look good. Like he calls other people names and talks trash about other people, and that's what it surprises me about the Republican Party, because I'm like, don't none of y'all use none of this ammunition that he gives you. He's slow. He walk around ugly. His hands don't match his face. His hair, like it's so much stuff that you can say about him, and nobody's does. I couldn't be a Republican because I would cut him so deep, and I would never have to put a hand on him. But he'd be cut up by the time I was done with him. He'd be
yeah,
cut up.
yeah,
No weapons involved.
his hair's looking weird, and like you say, and I've said this about other people, you see some weird people out there that put on weird clothes or a lot of makeup or bad makeup. And you know that at some point in the morning after they went through their routine to get ready, they looked in the mirror and they go, "Yeah, I look pretty damn good." I'm thinking, what the fuck is wrong with you? And Donald Trump, I think you're absolutely right. Donald Trump is a lazy son of a bitch. He's never been made to do anything. When he was president, he pretty much golfed and let other people do things, and he took credit for it. That's all he does. That's all he knows how to do. We know he doesn't take the time to read anything or understand
Mhm.
anything. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how this thing progresses and what Judge Marchand ultimately does if he can't shut his mouth. And let's be honest, he can't shut his mouth. I wanted to talk
You know
about
what?
what.
Maybe he uses, when you were younger, you used to go to the carnival and they would have like those funhouse mirrors. Maybe he has one of those in Mar-a-Lago where he stands in front of it and his waist is like squished in. He look
It
all
makes
thin and
it,
handsome. Yeah, I think he got a funhouse mirror in there.
yeah, it
He
makes him
got
look
to.
slimmer. It makes him look slimmer. If you go into some clothing stores now, they're not the
Yeah,
funhouse mirror, but they're mirrors that make you
yeah,
look a little slimmer. And I'll happen to walk
yeah,
by there and I go, "Fuck, I look good." And that's enough to make me happy until I walk out and walk in front of the window and go, "Oh, okay, fuck that." Um, I wanted to talk about another dumb bitch, and that's Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is the
Oh,
essence. She is the essence of not knowing when to give up, doubling down. Now we know she's angry about Mike Johnson allowing the funding bill to go on the floor and be voted on, and now she wants to call him out and get force him to vacate the Speaker of the House. Now the problem she's facing is most of the Republican Party is saying, "Don't do that. That's fucking stupid." The head of the RNC is saying, "Yeah, don't do this. This is fucking stupid." And the Democrats saying, "Look, we're going to save them anyway, so why would you waste your time?" But she, like we were talking about before, she can't say I'm wrong. She can't back down. She's going to force that vote next week to try to vacate Mike Johnson from the speakership. and she's going to fail miserably. She knows she's going to
Yeah.
fail miserably, but she's still going to do it.
She say she gonna force that vote next week. That's what she say.
You don't
Because she
think
was
so?
supposed to force it when they came back from vacation. Then
True.
she was supposed to force it the next week after that. Now she's forcing it. Oh, and then she wanted to see what her constituents said, right? And now she's gonna force it next week. That's what she say. I don't know what she gonna do. Um, the thing about her is she's kind of like she's just out there because the way that she likes to like kowtow to Donald Trump, he brought Mike Johnson to Mar-a-Lago and they did the little rounds and the show and dance that oh we broskies and all that stuff, right?
Right.
And she was still like, nope, nope, I want him out, I want him out, I want him out. I don't know if she's just running her mouth so much, but I think that she is so unhinged. If she really wanted to do it, she would have done it by now. I
Right.
do think she would. I think she's kind of like one of those people where she kind of like hyping herself up. Like she's just talking trash and talking trash to work herself up into doing something that she don't really want to do. But it's like she didn't already stepped in it, so she has to follow through. Personally, I want to see her do it. Like, what else is there? They're not going to do anything else anyway. So
Well, I think
go
I
ahead.
think I got a kick out of Mike Johnson too, because people are asking him the obvious question: did you cut a deal with the Democrats? Now, there's a couple things going on with that bill that passed, and a
Mhm.
lot of it had to do with Republicans trying to stain Joe Biden. First of all, the idea that Mike Johnson did what he did against MAGA is crazy by putting up the Ukraine bill to get the funding. But he knew almost no matter what he did, he was going to either fail miserably or uh, be put up for a vote of no confidence. So the idea that he didn't cut a deal with with the Democrats is absolutely ridiculous. The Democrats were desperate to get that Ukraine funding going because it was getting dangerous for Ukraine, which would be dangerous for the rest of the world. So they wanted to get it done. And of course, they cut a deal with them. There's 6 months left in the term. What the fuck is he going to do? I mean, if we don't have a Speaker of the House, I mean, who are they going to get? If you don't have a Speaker of the House, it does nothing for the next 6 months. So they definitely cut a deal with him on this situation. He'd never admit it, but that was a smart move on his part. And hopefully, this is the first step in taking away any power of MAGA, something the Republicans should have done right when Donald Trump left, but they let them flourish.
I think two things happened. I don't know if one was a bigger influence or if it was equal. The first thing that happened is he was meeting up with Mitch McConnell, and then the second thing that happened, some closed door meetings with the Democrats.
Right.
I tend to think that both of those played a role in this decision. I think that the Democrats were leaning on like the political side of it. And then maybe also exposing him to like the actual atrocities that could happen and laying that at his feet. And
Right.
then I think McConnell could have come in and been like, hey, this is going to be your political future. And if you want to remain relevant, you got to make these people remain irrelevant.
Right.
These backdoor deals and stuff that's going on, you kind of have to know how to play that in order for you to get ahead. But if you keep trying to pacify the crazies, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to be obsolete.
Right.
So if you want to make your imprint, the biggest way that you can make right now is making the MAGA wing of the caucus irrelevant. Like you
Right.
have to do that somehow. And the way that you can do that is to slide over here with these Democrats and make this deal. So I think that both of those working together is what caused his action that he has right now. I don't
Right.
think he would have solidified it if he wouldn't have had a deal with the Democrats, but I do think that McConnell could have been in his ear when he was meeting with him. I think both of those played a hand in that.
There's one more element of that bill where the Republicans were trying to damage Joe Biden, and that was the banning of TikTok. They put that in the bill. A Republican wrote that bill. And
Yeah.
as soon as that bill passed, what did they do? Oh, Joe Biden's trying to cancel TikTok. Donald Trump says I'm for TikTok. Joe Biden's trying to ban TikTok. And they did that on purpose. They said, okay, you want Ukraine, you're going to have to put TikTok in there too. And I think,
As if it can't be overturned later, but go ahead.
well, exactly. And you know, that's the thing. Everything about Republicans is performative. There's really no substance to it. I was talking to Eric, and there's a woman on TikTok called Under the Desk News. She's very bright. She said, I read the whole bill about TikTok, and it's probably the weakest bill she's ever seen. They aren't going to be able to
Mhm.
enforce it. TikTok is going to sue and claim the First Amendment, and they're going to win. Even if there's some point where they could maybe force them to sell it, we're talking a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years down the road. TikTok isn't going to be shut down based on this. It just isn't. But they wanted something they could blame Joe Biden for. So that's why they did it. They wrote the bill and then they blamed Joe Biden. And the only reason Joe Biden signed off on it, because he thought the Ukraine bill was that important. He needed to get that done. So he gave him a little bit on the TikTok thing and then would fix that at a later date. That's the only explanation I can possibly think of.
I mean, and then look how it didn't work out for them.
No,
Like, this is not the topic of conversation at this point. I
no.
think banning TikTok made headline news for like what, 2 days, maybe
Yeah,
three?
yeah.
And then after that, it kind of just like dissipated. Part of that is due to their own incompetence because they didn't do anything to keep it in the news and to keep it to the forefront of people's mind. It was like switch over to the next antic. They're all over the place with this and that. Any little spotlight that they could have had on TikTok, you got Marjorie Taylor Greene over here stealing up oxygen in a room, Trump over here stealing up oxygen in a room. You have this infighting going on. It's like when you make those kind of moves, you have to just keep pounding it and pounding it and pounding it and keeping it out there and keeping it out there. Kind of like what they did to Hunter Biden. Like they could have kept riding this ban TikTok wave, but they were just too incompetent to do that. They just kind of let it fizzle out. And I was actually surprised that they let that happen. I thought that they would maybe have hearings on Capitol Hill about TikTok, or, I thought they would just put some oomph behind it. They just put the bill out there. They got Biden to sign it, and then they were like, yep, it's his fault. And then they just walked off.
Well, you know, they did
Why did you do that?
they do that with everything though. They're because they're lazy too. They throw
That's
something
just
out.
stupid.
Well, they throw things out there and hope it's going to catch fire, but are too lazy to cultivate it. I mean, you mentioned Hunter Biden or
Yeah,
Joe Biden's impeachment or the bribe in Ukraine. All those things they kept trying to keep going to a certain extent, and then they got lazy. The whole impeachment thing, they've all thrown up their hands. They aren't going to follow that up. And it's kind of similar in a different way with the whole abortion thing. When they overturned Roe v. Wade, they thought they were doing something good. And then when 2022 hit and they got their ass kicked, they should have said, holy shit, we should back off of this because this isn't good for us in elections. But just the opposite of what they've done with TikTok and Joe Biden and all that stuff, they've decided to double down on it, to embrace it, to say, yeah, we stand by it, put in these draconian fucking laws in these states. They just keep it's like they got a big stick and they keep stirring up the cesspool because the stink
yeah.
keeps coming off of it and they just seem to love it.
I kind of look at it as like, like a Molotov cocktail, right?
Yeah,
With the TikTok thing, it's kind of like you can throw it into somebody's home, but you got to like light it before you throw it, right?
exactly.
So it's like they just threw it in the house, but they didn't light it. It broke through the window and it landed and that's it. But then on the other hand, when I think about the abortion issue, it's like they lit it, they threw it, and then the people in the house grabbed it and threw it back in that and their car burning. Like it's kind of like I don't know. I'm trying to think of just like not even the Three Stooges would just like mess this up like this. It's like what they try to do, they fail at it. And then the only thing that they are succeeding at is just like messing themselves up. It's backwards. It's really backwards. I don't get the logic there, but then it could just be like you said, like it's lazy, because you can throw something out there and expect for it to stick, but
You
you
got to
got to have
work it.
something for it to stick to. You got to
Yeah.
work for it, make it stick. Put some double-sided tape on it before you throw it at the wall. Like, do whatever you can to make it stick. They just do nothing. They're just throwing crap out there. And it makes them look bad. It makes them look incompetent.
Well, and I think part of the reason they don't work it or they don't follow up is because if you go back 7 years or 8 years back prior to Donald Trump and and like say Hillary Clinton, it worked against Hillary Clinton. There was nothing there, but they threw it out
Yeah.
there and it worked. And apparently they're going to keep trying until it works. But now that we're in a little different world and Donald Trump and all has been exposed, that bullshit doesn't work. In this world now, because of Donald Trump, it takes a lot more to destroy somebody's fucking reputation. I mean, I've said it before back in my day in the 80s or whatever. Gary Hart is running for president, and there's a picture of
Mhm.
him with a bimbo sitting on his lap, and his career's over. Fuck, Donald Trump talks about sexually assaulting women, and that's not enough. We've become a more tolerant society, and it takes more to end somebody's career than it once did.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know how to explain them other than like a band of idiots or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it's kind of like people are more aware because it's more of an information age.
yeah,
And so because people have more access, there are a lot of, like I was talking about Carrie Lake earlier, she's on recording saying how she really feels about the abortion issue. Even with the known chick, what she did, which is just horrible.
yeah.
It's just like it's out there. It's public information. You can't take that back. So what you would expect is once you do something and people know that that's how you operate and that's how you move, your ops is going to adjust and they're going to move accordingly. So you have to do something different. So you can't just keep slandering people and then you don't expect for people not to just come with receipts.
Right.
And that's the crazy thing about like they're trying to do 2016 and 2024 and that's not working. Like you expect to sit here and say that Biden is tied to the Chinese Communist Party, but then you get surprised in the hearings when Jasmine Crockett come out with all the receipts against like all the ties that Trump got to the CCP, right? So it's kind of like you're not expecting for them to combat it when they already know what you're going to do because you've done that before. So it's kind of like you want to be stuck in 2016, but you want everybody else to be stuck in 2016 with you.
Well, yeah, I
That
think
only makes sense.
yeah, I think you're right about that. We have too much information. I remember
Yeah.
years ago I was listening to a celebrity being interviewed, and he was talking about going to Australia, I think, and he was admonishing Australia's tabloid journalism, and I use that term loosely. And he made the example of how they try to ruin you, and you get off the plane. The guy says you get off the plane, and the reporter comes up and says, "So, are you still beating your wife?" And the guy says, "Well, no, of course not." And then the headline is such and such denies beating his wife when he never beat
Mhm.
his wife. So, that's that kind of yellow journalism where they put out these leading questions and then they pervert it and they put it out there. It's harder to do that now because, like you say, there are receipts for everybody who comes out with a crazy headline. There's 10 people coming out with receipts on that. So that
Right.
tactic doesn't work anymore, but apparently the Republicans don't know that yet.
And that is so, I don't want to say it's unfortunate because it's a good thing that they're stuck like that. I think that as a party as a whole, they're just regressive by nature.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't think that they have the ability to try to like strategize, to lead, to look ahead, because it would have been so simple if they would have just like instead of trying to make Donald Trump conform to the Republican Party, if they would have just used him.
Yeah.
Like once he got in, okay, you already know who his VP is, right? Mike Pence. You already know he's going to give you your judges. You already know that he's going to pass the laws that you like, when he's not going to come with all the scandal. So, I mean, it would have been so easy to just let Trump get impeached and get him out the way, and then just move Pence up there and then put whoever you want to put in the VP seat. To me,
Yeah.
it always baffled my brain that they didn't do that, just because of how like evil and like dirty they play. But for whatever reason, I think maybe part of it is they just weren't used to being popular. And so when they got Trump coming along and he seemed like he was popular, they really didn't know how to act. They just all had to get on that popular bandwagon. And I think that maybe that's what's kept them there at that particular time. I don't know what keeps them there now though. I don't get that part. But I think if they would have been more strategic with Trump, like, okay, let's get rid of him. Thank you for getting us the election one. We're gonna put Pence up there. We could do everything with him that we would have done with you, but you on your own. They could have so easily have done that. But I do think maybe popularity was a part of that. It definitely wasn't policy.
Yeah, I think the Republicans fucked up, and they're just now realizing how they fucked up. They took a guy who's popular, but he's
Yeah,
also dumb, and they let him run the show. What they should have done is
yeah.
what you suggested: keep the popular guy up there, but control him. Keep him under control. It wouldn't be hard to blackmail that motherfucker, but they should
Not
have
at all.
controlled him from, but they couldn't control him. You know,
Yeah.
it's like buying a brand new car and then realizing there's no steering. The steering doesn't work. And that's pretty much what they bought into something that they thought would get them popularity and get them support. And then they realized this is a fucking crazy train we're on, and there's nothing we can do now. We already bought into it. And I think they're just now realizing that they fucked up.
Do you think they realize it though? I know that there's some who do.
I think some of them
But at the
do, the
same
smart
time,
ones.
I think it's a lot of them who don't, because it's just kind of like they have dug their heels in and they just will not let that go. So
I
I
th-
wonder, like, I know some realize it, but then I also just sit here and I just sometimes I question myself. It has to be more of them who really do believe it than those who don't. It has
well,
to be.
well, I think people like Mitch McConnell, the 20
Mhm.
some people who are retiring from the House of Representatives,
Right.
anybody with a reasonable mind, I think they realized that they fucked up and they gave too much control to an absolute idiot. But there's always going to be the cult members, the Trumplafucks, the little Trumplafucks, and even people in the House of Representatives. I mean, I think one of the things you have to realize, especially in the House of Representatives, I've talked about this with Ed before, as much as you might want to revere them because they're in elected office and they're a representative in the U.S. House of Representatives, there are some crazy dumb motherfuckers in the House. I mean, they are. I mean, if you were to take the Senate and the House, the Senate would be in a normal class, and the House would be special needs because they're fucking nuts. I mean, they're just average Joes coming out of their little districts and getting a seat in the House, getting a big salary, and they get to start spewing whatever they think, and they start buying into their fucking headlines, and they think they're smart. And I've always said this, when you've got somebody who's dumb but wants to learn, that's cool. But when you get somebody who's dumb and thinks they're a genius, like Donald Trump or some of these reps, that's fucking dangerous. And we're seeing it play out now.
I don't think that they want to learn though. I remember
No,
like during a hearing when they were like admonishing Marjorie Taylor Greene for whatever she was doing, I don't know. And she said, "Well, how am I supposed to know what the rules are?" And I heard across the aisle, I think it was AOC, she was like read the rule book. Like it was just that simple. Like it never dawned on her that maybe I need to read the rule book to know what the rules are. But I think a lot of them too have like huge egos. And I think with their egos, it doesn't allow for them to have like an intelligent or an experienced staff, like staffers who actually know how to research, staffers who actually know the facts, staffers who can actually put together a presentation that can't be easily combated from the other side.
yeah.
And I think that maybe some of them might just be like hiring their friends and giving jobs away or whatever, because the way that they get crushed in these hearings is just embarrassing. So I don't even think that I don't want to say that they're not smart enough to hire good staff, maybe they just don't know how, or maybe their egos won't allow for them to hire someone who they perceive as smarter than them. And that could be part of what's undercutting them as well, because you don't have to be like uber intelligent. If you have a good team around you, they can give you your talking points. They can give you a bulletin. They can lay it out for you in a way where you can present it. You're just the personality behind their hard work, right? That's
Right.
not hard to do, but they can't even do that. So it just lets me know that even their staff is, I don't know if their staff is MAGA, if their staff is just like friends and family they gave jobs to, or what is going on. But
Yeah.
when they don't even have decent researchers on their team, that says a lot. And
Yeah.
they're anti-government too. So how do you have anti-government working in government?
That
That
doesn't
doesn't
make.
make like that's bizarre to me. But I noticed a lot of them are anti-government as well. So
I think there's a lot of anti-government, and I don't know if it's so much as they're anti-government, they're anti-anything that
mm,
doesn't give them what they want. I mean,
true.
because I'll be honest with you, and I've said this before, when they do something and they skirt the law or do something that's crazy, they don't look beyond the end of their nose, like this whole immunity thing, you know? They want to give Donald Trump immunity. They're not thinking about we're giving Biden immunity, or that everything they did in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, that means as long as that's been okayed, that anybody in the future can do it. They're so wrapped in their little world, they don't care about the ramifications. They only care about what's going to save them, and then they'll worry about the after effects later. And they're so small-minded. I mean, it just makes no sense. They're incompetent. That's the only way to
Mm.
explain it. They are absolutely in fucking competent.
Someone in the comment section, I don't know if it was last week or the week before that, when we were talking about the laws and how archaic that is.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff has to be changed, because a
Oh,
lot of the things that they get away with right now is because the rules are so archaic. Because one thing that we learned definitely during this Congress session is that speech and debate law that they have, where you can sit there and slander people and lie on people and present evidence that just is made up, completely fabricated. It's allowed because you're in a committee hearing. So
right.
you're on national television in front of millions of people, and you're presenting text messages that you completely made up and manipulated, or you're sitting here showing nudes, which technically is a crime, it's revenge porn, and then you can sit here and just lie your butt off, just
Right.
out and out lies. And then you know that you're not going to be held accountable for it because you have the speech and debate clause law that they have going
Right.
on. That is like one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever heard of in my life. It's perfectly fine to slander, lie, make up, manipulate information, and give it to the American public, millions of people, and not be held accountable for it because of this archaic rule or law. It's just, it makes no sense. So whoever said that in the comment section, I was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely right. A
Well,
lot of these laws is enabling this behavior because people don't act like they did in 1800 anymore. So
no,
we really do need to start getting some of those laws either off the books or modernize them to the type of political climate that we're in right now, because a lot of that is our undoing, is those laws that is protecting the crap that they're doing. I'm pretty sure the founding fathers did not create those laws so Marjorie Taylor Greene can show Hunter Biden's pecker on
well, well,
national television.
well, the reason why they haven't changed those archaic laws is because, presidents and senators and reps have always had what they call norms. And these
Yeah.
norms, nobody, prior to 2015, people didn't overstep those norms where they'd have to call into play the laws. They never did that. There was some decent, a little bit of decency, or at least enough sense not to make themselves look stupid. But the moment Donald Trump came in, all norms were off. They stepped over every fucking line. And now these archaic laws come to the surface and you go, fuck, we're not covered. They never had to use those laws before Donald Trump because most people stayed relatively in their lane. Maybe not totally, but at least if they stepped out of their lane, they were quiet about it. Donald Trump wasn't quiet about it. So that's why it's been exposed that these laws really don't do any good, because nobody's ever had to use them before. And it doesn't
Yeah,
go back to the old days. It goes back to before 2015.
I was at a community event, and one of the guys, he was like, "You know your language? I don't like it." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said it kind of reminds him of Biden when he says, "My friends across the aisle," or "my good friend over here or there." He was like, "You don't have no friends across the aisle. You don't have no good friends in the Republican Party. Like, they are all out to get you." And he said, "You do the same thing when you say mainstream Republicans or regular Republicans." He said they all enable this behavior. So how mainstream are they? Like, they all wild at this point if you're still enabling this stuff. So why do you say mainstream? And I was just kind of like, I had to think about it, but I'm just feeling like I don't know why I say that. I really don't.
I'll tell you why.
I don't.
I'll tell you
I don't
why.
know.
Um, what the guy is saying is right, and you're right too. Unfortunately, the people that would be friends of Joe Biden, he has friends on the Republican side. He's been there for fucking 40 years. Of course he does. Um, uh, but the difference between you and him, or you and me, is that you have a little diplomacy. I don't experience the benefit of diplomacy. I'm not diplomatic, and that's why when people say you should run for office, no, I'd never last in office, because I don't have diplomacy. I don't have the patience that you have. There's nothing wrong with what you're saying. We'd like to believe there's some reasonably minded Republicans, and there are. But as he said, even the reasonable minded ones did enable Donald Trump. So they have to have a little culpability in this whole fucking thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I think for me, I think I might look at it differently if I didn't see so much up close and personal the people that it affects the most. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of like, sometimes these people, they really just don't know. And they take comfort in things that it's nothing to take comfort in. Like, they don't know that exceptions is just a piece of paper. They
Right.
really don't know that. But then the thing that upsets my auntie about it is they took comfort in exceptions because those exceptions would have benefited them. But what about the women who the exceptions would not have benefited? They wasn't worried about that until they were put in a situation. I take more of like a light hand with the women that's here, but anytime they talk to her, she don't like worry about how much pain they in, what they going through. You ask me, I'm gonna give you the answer. That's pretty much how it is. But I do see why people feel like they all enabled the behavior.
Right.
They didn't really worry about how it would affect other people. They were just kind of worried about, oh, it's not going to affect me. I
Right.
would never need to have an abortion. I would never need this. I would never need that. But then when it does affect them, at that point, then they can sympathize and empathize with other women. But before that, they couldn't. It's a pretty difficult thing to wrap your mind around because I don't have to go through half of the stuff that some people in this country go through for me to really empathize and sympathize for other people's situation. It doesn't have to be something I personally experienced, but I can look at that and be like, yeah, that's pretty jacked up. I don't know how you made it through that, but you can get through that. You know what I mean? But other people, they're not really built like that. Or
Well,
they're taught something different. Like, it has to be by the Bible, what this pastor told you, or how you grew up, or whatever bubble it is that you're in, which
well,
is,
I think the difference between
I think
you and
after this
me,
election, we all got to deprogram, and I'm gonna be like unraveling a bunch of crap in my mind.
I think the difference between you and me is you like to see the good in people, and I do too. But I know there's no good in Republicans, and I'm not. You're a nice person, and I'm not that nice, because, as I've said before, I, uh, I'm not diplomatic, and I just don't give a fuck. And we're gonna wrap up this show, and when I say I don't give a fuck, I look at my granddaughter. People like it when I tell the granddaughter stories, and this was a funny one because even though she's 4, she doesn't give a fuck
Hmm.
about. I mean, she has no problems we're sitting, we're sitting,
Get that from?
yeah, well, exactly. And this is my greatest joy. When I'm dead and gone, a little slice of me is going to be bouncing around this motherfucker in the form of my granddaughter. But we're sitting in my son's apartment, and she's walking around in her new pajamas and stuff. And as she walks by me and Cindy, my wife, well, as my wife calls it, she toots. She passes gas. And as she's walking by, she does that, and my wife looks at her and she says, Joni. And she, no, she doesn't say that. As she's walking by, she does that and she looks at us. She goes, that was me. That was me. She wants to take full credit. And we said, Junie, come on. And as she's walking away, she says to us, and I think I got another one coming. And she keeps going. Now there's a little girl, don't give a fuck. And I take great pride in that because while I wouldn't do that, that's me. I don't give a shit. And I love the fact that she has it. And I think the difference between you and me and you and other people is you do give a shit. And thank goodness for that. We need people like you to do that. The world would not be perfect if everybody was like me. But so I can appreciate who you are and why you do things. And I'm not going to fault you for it because we do need those people.
I have one question before you log off.
Yeah.
Did you see George Santos's video?
I did not. I kind of heard about it, but I don't really know what was it.
Do you remember that video that came out about him in the drag with the red and all that stuff?
Yeah.
He made a video.
When
we get off of here, yes, you got to watch it. And then you got to tell us what you think about it tomorrow, because I just got to know what you think. The first thing I said was when that video first came out and he denied it, right? He put that same outfit on with the red feathers, the wig, the everything. And he came out and made a whole video. I forgot what he named himself, but he has a whole like drag name and everything. You got to watch it. But I was like, he lied about it. And then he don't even care because now he's just out in the full attire. Like, I was like, why would you even lie about it? But I guess maybe at that time he had to. Well, I thought it was hilarious when I saw it. I was like, oh, okay, live your best life, boo, do you?
well, he's going on trial. He was going to run for office. Then he backed out of that. And now he's going on trial. He's likely to be convicted and he's going to jail. So not unlike my granddaughter, he don't give a fuck anymore. What's he got to lose?
That's what I mean. When you told me the story about your granddaughter, I was like thinking about somebody else who just don't care anymore. Like he like, I don't care. I'm just gonna do me. Yeah. I don't know if he's just doing that for what do they call it when you pay them to send the little messages?
Oh, what's it called? The cameo?
Yeah. I don't know if he's just doing it for cameo or if he just, just said, hey, this is me now. I don't know why he came out with the video, but I got a good kick out of it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny. I really did.
I'm going to have to watch that. I'll check it out. Well, Old Soul, thank you very much for taking the time that you do. It's always much appreciated. I know the comments will be full tomorrow, and thank God for you. I'm not great with comments because there's a lot of them, and
I'll do as many as I can. It was like the last time, it was like a lot. I try to do as many of as I could. Yeah. It's
a lot. I mean, between TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, it's impossible to answer all the comments. So what I would always suggest, if I'm not answering your comment, just send an email to rationalboomer@gmail.com. Or if you're really brave, like Old Soul, just come on the fucking show. It's as easy as that. I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to come on. Well, Old Soul, thank you very much. You probably have to check on the Wild Child because God knows what she's doing now with an hour or two.
They do axe throwing on the weekend, on Wednesdays. But when we were on our break, she sent me a text message and said they was back. But I just need to go in there and check on her, make sure she's doing everything she needs to do, and check on my house guest because she was in the hospital earlier. So,
well, it's you got another house guest who you're helping out, who you're actually offering some nursing to. It sounds like, and then you got the Wild Child. And then you got the one sane person in your house, your daughter. And then you got you and Uncle Cleo coming over and all this going on. You got this little white girl asking for soul food now. Um, and then of course you've got a job and try to live your life. So I give you credit. You're able to handle far more than I am.
Yeah. Days go by quick.
I bet they do. All right, old soul, thank you very much. For those of you listening, I appreciate you taking the time to do so. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.